The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Again, Jesus left the district of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, into the district of the Decapolis. And people brought to him a deaf man who had a speech impediment, and begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him off by himself away from the crowd. He put his finger into the man's ears, and spitting, touched his tongue. Then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. Immediately the man's ears were opened. His speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. He ordered them not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. They were exceedingly astonished, and they said, He has done all things well. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
There was this priest, and he was an angry priest. He was a pastor, and that'll make you angry. I'm just teasing. And he wouldn't listen to his parishioners. He thought that he was right. He always thought that he was right. And when the parishioners were suffering, he wouldn't speak up for them. He wouldn't help them out. He was bitter. He was a perfectionist and was unforgiving. And when he died, they put on his tombstone, "Return to sender." Unopened. I like that whole part there. People always laugh before I get the last part out. Return to sender, unopened. You know, it's an unopened priest. In the gospel today, we hear this graphic story of Jesus putting his finger into this deaf man, this deaf and mute man, putting his fingers into his ears and spitting on his finger and touching his tongue. And then, did you hear it? He groans, Ephphatha, be opened. He wants this man to be able to hear. He wants this man to be able to speak. Now, I've talked a lot about deafness and hearing the truth. What I want to talk about today is that the man was mute. You see, that man is a stand-in for everyone. And how, in particular, I want to talk about today that we can be mute. We in our life are called to find our voice. Our journey is to find our voice. Can you imagine being that man? How sad it must have been that he was not able to communicate. He was in a prison, is what he was in. And freedom is about being able to find our voice. I think that we can be in prison in our life. We can be mute. Mute when it comes to our feelings. That we can not understand them in our life, especially us men. We can be out of touch with our feelings. And the truth of the matter is that most of us act even though we don't know what our feelings are, which really makes it hard for us to understand why we're doing things. And most of us act out of our feelings, act out of our anger and fear. Most of us act out of that. Our feelings rule us, even though we don't even know what they are. And it's only in understanding our feelings and why we feel the way we do will we be able to change. Can't change unless we know and understand our feelings, so they will no longer rule us. I think another way that we are mute is that we are mute in our prayer. We don't share everything in our prayer. We only share partly of ourselves. We share with God the good stuff, the things we agree with God. But we don't share those dark feelings of anger and fear with God. Do we? We want to hide that from God. And it's only in being able to share all of ourselves that we can discover that God, guess what? Loves all of us. Every part of us. Loves us unconditionally. And it's only then when we share ourselves completely with God that we can hear other ideas. Or we might even hear the fact that God doesn't disagree with us. After all. I think another way we can be mute is we don't speak the truth to the world. Do we? We let other people speak up. We let other people speak for us, and we sit back. And then we are upset because they are not sharing what we believe is true. We do that in our church, don't we? Let Father speak for us. Jesus groans today. Be opened. Speak. Jesus so much wants us to be opened. And that's the one thing that he cannot do for us. That's an inside job. That is an inside job. Be open when it comes to discovering our feelings and why we feel the way we feel. It's only in sharing our feelings, sharing it aloud, that we will be able to understand what our feelings are in the first place. It's only being able to share it with someone who's able to model their own feelings, who are willing, that are accepting of our feelings the way they are, who won't run from us, and who are willing to give us feedback on how they would feel. So often that helps us. Counselors can help us get to our feelings. That's what they're best at. 12-step programs can help us get to our feelings. Be opened. Be opened in our prayer. Share what's really going on with God. God already knows. Guess who doesn't? We don't. It's only in sharing our prayer, sharing all of ourselves in our prayer, that we can discover our own feelings and thoughts. That we can discover our voice. Be open. Be open. Speak the truth to this world. Speak up. Speak up for the poor, the outcast, the lame, the victim. Speak up for them. It's only in finding our voice, it's only in doing that in our life that we will find Christ's voice. It's only in doing that. Because that's the one thing God, the big gift in our life is our voice that comes of all things from Him. That's what happened at Vatican II. The people found their voice. That's what happened. And they shared that at Vatican II, God's voice was heard. That the church worked collaboratively. And I think that maybe we slipped back, or we never have really lived Vatican II. We went back to trusting and expecting others, the leadership, to speak for us, the clergy. In Vatican II, the people spoke collaboratively with the leadership of the church. I think that's the crisis today in our church. We can much more prefer to let Father speak, and that's the problem. How we are called to speak up, to find our voice. The challenge in our life to find that voice, to in our way be opened as Christ calls us to. Certain people believe they have a monopoly on the truth. And the truth is that everybody has a part of that truth to speak in this world. Truth is not a democracy, true, but each of us has a part of the truth. And when that truth is not spoken, something is missing in the world. That cannot be replaced by somebody else's voice. Don't let that be on your tombstone. Return to sender, unopened. Be opened in your life.